Good morning, Sabbath peace. We invite you to journey through Hebrews today by singing a classic folk hymn song. It may be familiar to some of you. It's called Wayfaring Stranger. To others it may be new, but as it becomes familiar to you and kind of grows on you, feel free to chime in. Stranger, I'm traveling through this world of woe, and there's no sickness, no toil, nor danger in that bright land to which I go. I'm going there to see my mother. She said she'd meet me when I come. Gone just over Jordan. I'm only gone over home. I'll soon be free from every trial, my body asleep in the old graveyard. I'll drop the cross of self-denial and journey to my great reward. I'm going there to see my father. I'm going there no more to roam. I'm only gone just over Jordan. I'm only gone over home. Wayfaring stranger, traveling through this world of woe, and there's no sickness, no toil, nor danger in that bright land to which I go. I'm going there to see my sister. She said she'd meet me when I come. Gone just over Jordan. I'm only gone over home. classic hymn, What Wondrous Love Is This? Love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this that caused the Lord of bliss to bear the dreadful curse for my soul, to bear the dreadful curse for my soul. To God and to the Lamb I will sing, I will sing. To God and to the Lamb I will sing. To God and to the Lamb, who is the great I am. While millions join the theme, I will sing. While millions join the theme, I will sing. And when from death I'm free, I'll sing on, I'll sing on. And when from death I'm free, I'll sing on. eternity, I'll sing on.
Red of blood hit the dirt, and the whole earth shook, the whole earth shook, as we watched them nail him to a tree. Oh, the wretched souls of sinners like me. God, you came, God, you came, my God, you came down. God, you came, God, you came, my God, you came down. Faint and weary you have brought me, oh my Savior God, through the cross you have sought me. What a love, your Son for my salvation. What a cost, your wondrous incarnation. God, you came, God, you came, my God, you came down. God, you came, God, you came, my God, you came down. God, you came, God, you came, my God, you came down. God, you came, God, you came, my God, you came down.
Good morning. I usually come up for our prayer / community / creative activities, and I'm here for that, but I'm also here at the moment to make an announcement / invite you all to participate in something that we, as a student pastoral team, have been planning for the summer. We are grateful to all of you who continue to worship with us every week throughout the summer. We are open all year long, and though we are on a college campus, we pride ourselves on being a fellowship that's intergenerational. If you feel that one place is your place, then it is your place, and that's what we strive to be. And so before the summer ended and many of the undergraduate students returned, we wanted to have an event for everyone who is part of the One Place Fellowship. And so on August 18, we're going to have an outdoor movie night on the lawn outside of the library with a big screen, and you can bring your blankets. It's a bring your own blanket, bring your own chair, bring your own snacks. You can bring whatever you want and just join us on the lawn. And we had trouble as a team trying to decide on the movie, and so Gabe thought, let's decide on the movie in service through a live poll. And so I created a live poll for us to do right now. We chose between two movies. We wanted to do a throwback, but then we also wanted to do something that was endearing. So our options are Up or Back to the Future. Wally is really hoping you choose Back to the Future, but do not let that sway you. So if you would like to vote for a movie, you can go to either pollev.com / my first name and the first 4 letters of my last name, 469, and vote, or you can text in, and then once you text in, you can vote either A or B. So I will let you know that this is not just voting for show. Whatever you vote for is the movie we will be watching. And I did open the poll. Last time we did a poll, it worked in first service and it didn't work in second service. And since we only have one service, that means it should work now. So we will see. It's working. So someone votes for Back to the Future. You. Oh. So apparently I have to pay to allow more of you to vote. I got 2 text messages and an email from Poll Everywhere just now. So do you feel that this is true to the general sentiment? Do more of you want to watch Up? So, yeah, we're gonna do this the old-fashioned way. All those who vote for Up, raise your hand. Okay. All those who vote for Back to the Future, raise your hands. There's a lot of people who aren't voting at all, and it's really hard for me to count. Cheering. It's really hard for me to hear cheers as well. According to our poll, it says up. So in order for me to be fair to the poll, we'll do up. But if anyone wants to watch Back to the Future, I'm sure that Wally would love to host a movie night at his house for anyone who wants to watch Back to the Future. So thank you all for voting. We are going to actually move into the lighting is perfect now that we're all warmed up. We're actually going to move into some time for us to have conversation with one another. Last week, we took the time to ask 4 questions because I'd been reading this book about gatherings and community and why we even gather. And one of the things is that a lot of times we gather and we leave uninspired, we leave not changed, we leave feeling that we had just wasted our time, feeling as if gathering is draining. And so I wanted to change that. I wanted to change that in the places where I gather. And I feel that as a community here, we should never feel drained from being here. We should feel that as we gather in community that we leave with something, that we leave having been changed, that we leave feeling honored to have interacted with someone else that we may not have seen all week. And so over the next few weeks, I'm going to be doing some time for us to talk to one another. You can talk with the person next to you or behind you or in front of you. But this week, we have a few questions, and then we'll close with prayer. But last week, we watched a video from Barbara Brown Taylor, who is one of my favorite preachers and authors. And so in her book, Leaving Church, she wrote something interesting. She said that the call to serve God is first and last to be fully human. And today, that's going to be our thought for us to meditate on as we talk to one another. What does that statement mean to you? That the call to serve God is first and last to be fully human. How does it challenge you? How does it challenge what it means to serve God and what we grew up or socially believe it means to serve God? And then how can you be more fully human this week? I don't know about you, but sometimes I try really hard not to be human. I try really hard to be Wonder Woman. I try really hard to be some really powerful, has it all together, perfect, magical being who can run on 4 hours of sleep and 6 cups of coffee and still get everything done and not fail at anything. I try really hard not to be fully human. But what does it mean for us to live giving ourselves the grace to be fully human and knowing that God is pleased with that? So let's take some time to talk about that, and then we'll come back and pray together.
So hard to fall so far, but I found heaven as life's went low. My heart beating
crashing waves in this grave. You won't relent to all I am is you. You have my heart. You have my heart. You have my heart, oh God.
So I really don't like interrupting your conversations, but the fact that you're having such good conversation means that you should continue to talk about these questions when you leave here and think about them throughout the week. Last week, I actually had someone who asked me, what makes your soul sing in the middle of the week, which was a question I had asked on Sabbath. So let us continue to think of how to engage one another beyond just the how are you, or beyond just the how can I pray for you. Let's go a little deeper and ask each other some different questions. And so as we continue, I invite you to pray with me. God in heaven, thank you. We're grateful today that you have made us human. We cannot always pray that prayer. Sometimes we attempt not to be human. We try so hard to be perfect, to get everything right, to be super mom or super dad, to be Wonder Woman or Superman. We try to ignore our limits instead of accepting them. We try to do everything well as if service to you means doing everything well. We try to put more on our plates than we can handle, and then we fail to give ourselves grace. So God, I'm asking for all of us in this room that we can learn to be more fully human, just as Christ was fully human and showed us how to do this human thing pretty well. God, I'm asking that you will remind us each day that it's okay to be human, for you created us and you called us very good. So may we understand that we are very good with all of our limitations, with all of our imperfections, with all of our not being able to get everything done in a day, with our unfinished checklist, our unfinished classwork. God, you made us very good. And so our greatest service to you is to just do this human thing well as we can. And so we're asking that we give ourselves grace as you have given us much grace. And that as we reflect on what it means to serve you and what it means to be fully human, that you will continue to whisper to us every single day, you are very good. We thank you for this. In Christ's name, amen.
Preacher. I use that joke every time. And short preacher doesn't just mean I'm like short. It means like, yeah. Anyways, I use that joke a little too much. Gets old. My name is Judit, and hi. So we're going through, at one place, we're going through a cloud of witnesses, right? A cloud of witness. But when I look at Hebrews chapter 11, I don't see a cloud of witnesses. I see a cloud of weaklings. And today's sermon, today's talk, is titled A Cloud of Weaklings. Changing the topic a bit, but still on the same. I think that there's a lot that we can learn from the games that we play. I like board games, and I like different games, and I like observing people's behaviors during games. And I noticed that board games teach us things about life. Like, for example, the board game Life teaches you about life, right? Or there's also Monopoly. Monopoly teaches us a bit about the rules of a capitalistic economy. There's also tic-tac-toe. This is we kind of play this in church. There's probably some people playing it now or might be playing it. Or we play it when we're children. And we kind of get the idea that there's actually a limited number of possibilities to win. There's only so many ways that you can actually win. So games teach us certain lessons, certain activities teach us certain things. There is one little activity that we play or that we do when we're younger, and I'm sure some of your children or children that are in here, you've played this or you've done this activity. It's called What Doesn't Belong. So I've got some images that I want you to look at, and together I'm going to give you a list of things, right? Either images or a list of words, and I'd like you to tell me what doesn't belong in this list of things. So we're going to do this little exercise and see what we learn. So what doesn't belong in this first image? Turtle. Super easy, right? You guys are like, no problem, it's a turtle. The turtle. Why doesn't the turtle belong? No legs. Somebody said no legs. It's a living thing. It's a living thing. The rest of them, yeah. All right. All right. So what about this next one? What doesn't belong here? The pear. Yeah. Super easy. The pear doesn't belong. Why doesn't it belong? Yeah, because it's food. The other things are transportation. All right. Now this was really easy. How about in this next list? Who doesn't belong? Oh, I heard Enoch and I heard Sarah. Why Sarah? Okay, somebody said because she's a female. Because she's a female, really? She doesn't belong? See? I planned that, by the way. All right. You think because she's a female, she doesn't fit. For me, it was a different reason, but I'll share that later. Okay, so what about in this next list? Who doesn't belong? There's somebody said Enoch. Why'd you say Enoch? Because his name starts with an E. Yeah. Super. Yeah. I thought people would think that. I actually, when I was putting this list together, I was actually thinking other things, but I realized that actually people would probably say Sarah in the first one because she's a female, and people would probably say Enoch here because his name started with an E. And I was like, I'm cool with that. All right, this next one. This one's going to be a little bit more difficult, I think. Why'd you say Abraham? I like that because that's exactly what I was. Oh, because it doesn't end with an H. Well, that's not the reason why, but okay. It was the beginning of the name, now the end of the name. So, what does this game do? This game kind of sort of teaches us that we're supposed to be looking for something that is off. Something is different. Something here doesn't belong. Some object does not match with the rest because in some way it doesn't share the same qualities. And so we've got to X it out on these little sheets when we're like little kids, and it's like, what doesn't belong? X, this doesn't belong, right? It doesn't share similar qualities. And as I was reading through the book of Hebrews, and as I was reading specifically with the text that we're going to be working with today, Hebrews chapter 11, verses 32 to 34, I couldn't help myself but play the game of what doesn't belong, or rather, who doesn't belong. I was trying to figure out what do all these characters have in common? Why are they found together in the hall of faith? And I was listing qualities here. I was playing who doesn't belong, or who belongs and why do they belong? I want to let you know, sort of as a warning, that as I go through through the list of names in verses 32 to 34 of Hebrews chapter 11, I'm going to do a little bit of trashing. I'm going to trash some people. It's not going to sound pretty, I think, but I have to do this because this is what I went through as I read the text. I have to do this because as I was reading through the hall of faith in Hebrews chapter 11, I couldn't help but play this game of who doesn't belong. I saw in Hebrews chapter 11 Abel, and I admired Abel because he offered a wonderful sacrifice to God through faith, and I could find no fault with Abel. So to me, Abel, who's mentioned in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 4, Abel fits in this hall of faith. And it went on, and I saw Enoch. And Enoch walked with God. So Enoch fits in the hall of faith. He fits in my hall of faith. He fits very well with people who need to be remembered. And then I saw Noah, and I thought, well, okay, yeah. He preached for a pretty long time. He went against the current. He was countercultural. I was like, all right, we'll let him pass because, he did have that one, after the flood. We'll let him pass. And then I saw Abraham, right? And I'm like, okay, Abraham was given a promise, and I was like, no, hold on a second. No. Abraham does not fit in the hall of faith. Abraham, if you remember, Abraham lied twice about his wife, saying that she was actually his sister. Abraham, in my book, goes under the heading cowardly liar in all caps. Not Abraham. Abraham does not fit. And Noah couldn't hold his wine? Really? No. If I start letting people in like Noah and like Abraham, I am watering down my standards. They do not belong in my hall of faith. So I was playing this who doesn't belong. And I thought to myself, why, Paul, if he's the author of the book of Hebrews, why is Paul pointing to these people? These are terrible examples to be giving people that you want to convince to follow the Christian faith. I'll tell you why. Think about when we see Adventists in the news who do something super crazy, who maybe go to a compound and get a whole bunch of weapons, and then there's this showdown with like the FBI and stuff. We're like, no, see that, no, like that was like an ad, there's some people who are Adventists, but it was like an offshoot of Adventism. Like that's not us. I'm not going to tell you I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, Christians, we're like that guy who lied about his wife. Christians, we're like that man who killed his daughter. Christians, we're like, no, we don't do that. So why is Paul sitting here pointing to these people as if they are some great examples of our faith? I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all, because I know that as Adventists, when we look at Adventists in the news who've done crazy things, I'm like, we don't point to them. We completely disassociate. We're not like them. That's not an example of us. No. Like, no, we're this. We're different. I thought these people do not deserve to be in a hall of anything remembered. And when I got to verses 32 to 34, I became really confused. And this is what I had agreed to preach on. So I couldn't back out. I was like, okay, this is what I agreed to. So let's read Hebrews chapter 11, verses 32 to 34. Paul says, "And what more can I say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, enforced justice, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, were made strong out of weakness, became mighty in war, put foreign enemies to flight." So the trashing begins now. Gideon, he's the first one on my list. Gideon, are you sure? We look at Gideon and we think of him very highly because he had 32,000 men. God shrunk his army to 300 men, and he was able to with this army, he was able to defeat the Midianites with a super small army. Wow, amazing. But when God actually calls Gideon at the outset of his ministry, when he first calls Gideon doubts. When the angel of the Lord comes to him, Gideon doubts that this is God, first off. So that's the beginning. And at the end of it, I don't know if you guys are familiar with what happens to Gideon or what Gideon actually does, because at the ending of his story in the book of Judges, he actually makes like a false idol, and people worship this false idol. And Israel is plagued by this false idol worship because this warrior, Gideon, who we all looked up to, caused us to like worship after this idol. Read, there's Judges chapter 8, verse 27 says, "Gideon made an ephod out of it," and that's referring to a whole bunch of like gold jewelry, "and put it in his city, in Ophrah. And all Israel whored after it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and his family." It's there. So don't tell me that Gideon is some great example, Christian example to follow. Barak, he's next on my list. Do you know why I'm frustrated that Barak is mentioned? I'm sure some women in the room, Danny's already over there laughing. She knows. She can. Why is Barak mentioned? Barak is not the hero of his story. No, he's not. You see, when you hear of Barak, you always hear of Barak in conjunction with? That's right. You hear of Barak in conjunction with Deborah. But Deborah's also not the heroine of that story either, you know, even though I can't find any fault with her. She approaches Barak and she's like, hey, God gave us this mission. We've got to go do this. And Barak is like, little Debbie, I'm not going unless you come with me. No, I'm not going to go unless you come with me. Coward, Barak. Coward. And then, at the end of the day, Sisera, their enemy, isn't even delivered into his hands. It's another woman, a woman who's not even, you know, a main character at the beginning of the story. Barak is not the hero of the story. So why in the world is Paul mentioning him here? In my book, he's a coward. Barak does not belong in my hall of people remembered. If anything, it should be Deborah. Deborah should be in there. And then Samson. Samson is the next person mentioned in verses 32 to 34. Samson, that's not too difficult. He's got such an unsavory story, right? And most people are like, oh, well, his mistake was that he fell in love with Delilah. No, his mistake wasn't falling in love, because Delilah wasn't the first woman that caught his eye. I'm sure you guys, if you go ahead and read the text a little bit more, Judges chapter 16, you'll discover that Samson actually had an inflated ego, and this inflated ego fed a habit of self-indulgence. And the only noble moment that I can actually find in Samson's story, in Samson's life, is at the end of his life. It's just this one moment. That's all. That's all he's got in his favor. One moment. That's it. In my book, he's got one noble moment. Samson does not belong in my book, in my hall of people remembered. And then Jephthah. Please, Jephthah, the guy who killed his daughter. Really? Paul, you're going to mention Jephthah. Yeah, he does. He mentions Jephthah. But to be honest, I have some sympathy for Jephthah, because Jephthah at least initially recognized, I need God. I need God's help in order to have any sort of victory. So he makes a vow with God, right? But it's kind of like a rash vow. The reason I'm upset with Jephthah is because he follows through with a rash vow, with a stupid vow, and he kills his daughter. He makes the most thoughtless vow in the history of humanity. He follows through with it. He does not belong in my hall of people remembered. And then the next person mentioned in verses 32 to 34 is David. I don't have to go much into detail with David either. I mean, David, he is mentioned as a man after God's own heart. In his youth, he had a wonderful showdown with Goliath, where he defeated Goliath, right? But David was a little too familiar with war and with the wives of other men. He was a little too familiar with them. I don't like this man. He does not belong. This bloodthirsty man does not belong in my hall of people remembered. And then I got to Samuel, and I thought to myself, well, actually, Samuel's not that bad. No, I like Samuel. Samuel, he fits in my hall of people to remember, of people to say, yeah, you know what? That's someone you can be like. The prophets, they have mixed reviews in my book. The prophets are also mentioned if you look at verses 32 to 34. And I don't want to go into the prophets because we've got cowards like Jonah and Elijah who run away. And then we've got people that I like Jeremiah, but Jeremiah was also really emotionally unstable. So do we really want Christians to be emotionally unstable? Do we really want to point and be like, oh yeah, be like Jeremiah. Jeremiah, emotionally unstable person. So Samuel, he fits in my hall of people to be remembered. And then I realized, hold on. That's not how the game goes. No. Because the way the game goes, it was so strange, you know. I've got this list of people, and I say, well, Samuel, he fits in my hall of things to remember. But this entire other list, they don't fit. So it was kind of the opposite. Precisely what I was looking for didn't fit with what the text says fits, you know? When we play what doesn't belong, our opinion is guided by the objects which hold a majority position, right? We saw the pair, and we were like, hold on, that doesn't fit because you've got transportation objects around. The majority, that's what belongs in that group. If anything, then, I should have concluded that Samuel is the one who doesn't belong in this list. And the other guys, they are right among their peers. They should be in this hall that Paul is talking about. So what was I missing as I was reading these verses, as I was playing my game of who doesn't belong? By my third year in my undergrad, when I was in undergrad, I had lost touch with a lot of my friends from high school. I went to a public high school. And one evening, I somehow get in touch with, and I don't remember if she reached out to me or I reached out to her, but one of my friends from high school, we got in touch. And we start talking about how our lives have changed since high school. You know, it's been like 3 years since high school, and we're like, oh yeah, this is how my life has changed. Well, I start sharing, this is how my life has changed. My life had changed wonderfully. I was going to Southern Adventist University. I was enjoying college life, but I was on a pretty good track. And I want to tell you something about this friend. Like, her and I, in high school, we took these business classes together. We took like accounting, and we were both really proud of how well we did in these classes. Like, she was a top-notch student. She was a top-notch girl, all of that. And then when I'm done telling my story, she begins to tell me that her life has changed drastically. She had been in and out of different jobs. She had been fired for stealing. She had been suffering with some drug addiction. And now, as I spoke to her on the phone, she was actually in an abandoned house, and the only thing that she had to eat was a packet of ramen. I was so saddened, and you know what happens when people are sort of like telling you about their current struggles? You kind of try and help them brainstorm, like, what can we do? How can you get out of this? So we started, brainstorming and discussing how can you get out of this. And I thought it was so funny. I don't remember what her solutions to her situation were, but I remember that I thought them so ludicrous. Whatever option she thought of, like, maybe I can move here where I know some distant person, X, Y, and Z. And I was like, you don't even know that person too well. Why would you? No, I had a better way to offer her. I had better solutions, better options. And I had so many. I was like, yeah, no, I have these better options. And one of the things that happened in this conversation wasn't just, hey, what about these options? These are so much better. It was also pointing her to people that we were both familiar with who had gone through struggles, but that were keeping on fighting the good fight, you know? What I was doing is I was pointing her to flawed human beings who were going through struggles, but human beings who were continuing on that fight. I was pointing her to peers. We all face difficulty, but just because we face difficulties doesn't mean we have to give up. Doesn't mean we have to continue on in the terrible track that we're going in. And that's kind of what I was telling my friend. Like, yeah, you're facing some difficulties, but you don't have to give up this way. You don't have to give up that way. So I encouraged her to continue on to a better path. I pointed her to imperfect people like us, but people who were not refusing to give up in the good fight. Again, I think that the author of the book of Hebrews is Paul. And he was probably writing to Christian Jews, people who had been Jewish. They converted over to Christianity. But given the difficulties that they're facing, they want to ditch Christianity. They want out. They're wavering in their faith. Perhaps some of them were ready to abandon Christianity. And just as you or I would encourage a friend and point them to like, hey, you know what? So-and-so is also going through the same problem. But guess what? So-and-so did X, Y, and Z. You know, they're so-and-so, but X, Y, and Z. That's the same thing that Paul is doing. And he bases much of his argument on the Old Testament to keep the Hebrews trusting in Jesus. What he's doing is he's trying to get them to remember something. He's trying to get them to remember that these Christian Jews, that they could not continue. They could not go back to Judaism. They had to make a decision which way they would go. And he pointed to these people, these flawed human beings that they were familiar with. He pointed to these people in order to make the argument that Jesus was the better way. It kind of still doesn't make sense, does it? You want me to look at these failures to tell me that Jesus is the better way? The strategy that Paul is using to get these people to continue on in the Christian faith is to paint this hall of faith. And it almost doesn't make sense. Why would you point to Abraham? Why would you point to Jephthah? Why would you point to David? Why do these people matter? I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what I realized when I was playing my game of who doesn't belong. It's because if he made it, so can you. If she made it, so can you. If he's in the hall of faith, so can you. If Abraham was in the hall of faith, why not someone like Rahab? This hall kind of worked as a mirror to me too, because when I take a more careful look at what is packed in verses 32 to 34, I notice that Paul points out some excellent achievements of people, of these flawed people. He says, if you'll read with me verse 33, a little into verse 33, these people who through faith conquered kingdoms, they enforced justice, they obtained promises, they stopped the mouths of lions, they quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, they were made strong out of weakness, became mighty in war, put foreign armies to flight. I had only been looking at these people's failures, but Paul was considering their achievements as well. And these weren't achievements like, oh, he overcame eating cheese, y'all. No. These were not some personal, small victories. Enforcing justice deals with making decisions in a socio-political environment. Stopping the mouths of lions indicates supernatural strength. Conquering kingdoms means to overthrow faulty systems. Just as Gideon, Barak, Samson, David, and Jephthah had tangible failures, they also had really tangible victories. They were granted these wonderful victories. And when it comes to their character, yes, they also had failures, but they also had victories. Yeah, Gideon made mistakes at the beginning and the end of his life, but this was not the whole of his walk with God. You've heard the saying, the sum, what is it? The sum is more than the whole, that's what it is. The whole is more than the sum of its parts. I was picking apart these pieces of these people's lives, and it really wasn't fair because that's not how God was looking at it. Sure, David was a bloodthirsty man, but if I separate the parts of his story, I'm not taking into account the whole of his story. Samson had a terrible record, but he sought the God of his fathers, the God that he knew was still in business, the God that he knew still made miracles. Just as he had character fails, he also had character wins. And this went for everyone. This goes for everyone in the Hall of Faith. And FYI, it goes for you too. When I come to this realization, I can't keep playing a game of who doesn't belong. And when I realized this, I all of a sudden had a lot of joy too. Because I was sharing this with Danny earlier, I tend to be kind of harsh on myself and therefore harsh on others, which you've just seen. I'm really harsh on these guys in the Hall of Faith. I was playing this game of who doesn't belong. And I was placing people in these categories of, yeah, you're righteous. Yeah, you're cool in my book, but you're not. And by my own standards, I don't even belong in the Hall of Faith. By my own standards, I wouldn't have made it. But the book of Hebrews is telling me a different story. This letter communicates that God still works with flawed humans. God works with weaklings like these. God is working with a cloud of weaklings. And if God works with weaklings like these, he can work with a weakling like me. Verse 34 says that these people quenched the power of fire. They escaped the edge of the sword. But it also says that they were made strong out of weakness. They were made strong out of weakness. And it doesn't say that they went into war being strong. Instead, it says that they became mighty in war. They became mighty in war. I just couldn't help but think of the process of sanctification. It's a lifelong thing. Earlier this week, one of my professors, Oliver Glons, reminded my class that God is writing everything that you do down. And usually when people say, God is writing down everything you do, it's got that kind of like, he's writing down, watch it, be careful, he's writing what you do, good or bad, you know, like, But he said it differently. So my professor, he said, God is writing down everything you do, good or bad. And he's writing it down because your story is meaningful to him. I wanted to cry when he said this because I kind of realized like, okay, wait a second. God isn't becoming disappointed in me when I have failed. But he's not overlooking my failures as if they're not part of my story or as if they're unimportant. No, they're very important. They're very significant. Everything is meaningful to him. And as I look in the Bible, I see people's failures and people's victories. But the protagonist of it all is really God, who is working with these weaklings. And so it's as if when I fail, God doesn't cross his arms and say, you can do better, dust yourself off and get back up. Instead, he points to this cloud of weaklings and he says, if I worked with them, don't you think I can work with you? I can't give up on God then when I have failed, when I have made stupid mistakes, whether it be relational mistakes, moral mistakes, mistakes on an exam, I don't know, you know? I cannot turn around and turn back and say, well, God, you didn't call me. Well, God, I guess this means no. Instead, I have to get back up because God's not giving up on me. He's writing everything down. Every part is meaningful to him. He is not giving up on me. And if people like this can receive the promises of God, so can you. Keep the faith and keep walking because you belong in this hall of faith. Stop playing games of who doesn't belong. Christ got up so that when you fall down, you could get up again. If there is something that I learned from the Hall of Faith in the book of Hebrews, it's to not give up on God. Don't give up on God because somewhere it says, remember what we have heard, lest we drift away from it. Remember this history. Don't give up on God because somewhere it's written, hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering, because he who promised is faithful. You may be faithless, you may have failed, but he is faithful. He is by your side. He is there to strengthen you, to help you back up. Don't give up on God because somewhere it's plain that he is able to deal gently with those who are ignorant and going astray. He deals gently with these weaklings. Don't give up on God because somewhere else it also says, We don't have a high priest who is unable to sympathize. No, 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 no. We have a high priest who is able to sympathize with our weaknesses. He is one who in every respect, in every way, was tempted as you and I are. But he was without sin. So then, because of that, with confidence, with boldness, with confidence, draw near to him, draw near to his throne of grace, that you might receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Don't give up on God because somewhere it says that the righteous fall 7 times, but they get up each time. Don't give up on God because somewhere else God says, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. My power is made perfect in weaklings. I can no longer play a game of who doesn't belong in this hall of faith. You belong in this hall of faith because God still appoints and God still works with weak men and women to be his ambassadors. You belong in the hall of faith because Jesus, the greatest ambassador of all, came and shared your weaknesses, and he is not ashamed to call you brother and sister. We are his family. Let us pray. My Heavenly Father, I am infinitely grateful that you are writing down every part of my story and that you are writing down every part of the story of everyone in here. You're writing down everything that is good, everything that is bad. You are writing down the moments when we struggle, and you are also writing the moments when you and I win together, when we win together. And for this reason, because you're writing everything down, I beg you, Father, to remind us constantly of this cloud of weaklings so that we may know that we can get back up with you, that we are part of this hall of faith, that you are by our side. Remind us, lest we should forget. Remind us of how you have worked in the past. I pray this in Christ's name. Amen.
Wait, before you go, I just wanted to thank Judit for sharing with us this message. And I wanted to remind you all, as we continue this journey through Hebrews 11, that you are more than welcome to also share with our collective project of getting 1,000 cranes. So there's origami paper and some outside, so you can take some paper with you and practice making cranes and add them to our basket. You can also, next week, you can fold cranes in service or before service or after service. So, and there'll be more information about our movie night. So thank you for joining with us, and I pray you have a great week.
Oh, praise God.
You brought it strong at the end. I like that.
Your hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you, our Christ. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is, and nothing compares to this.